Brian, as a dad that loves video games and MMOs, I would love to see a video from you about how you juggle being a dad, a partner, a gamer, and a streamer while keeping harmony in your life. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Failed, just like Brian trying to make this channel successful. Lol. Let's get real. Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Brian if you're new around here, and this is going to be hopefully a very special video. This is something that I've actually put a lot of thought into over the last couple of days, and I wanted to sit down and share with you guys some stories about my life and about who I am that I feel like directly relate to these two very different kind of comments. In fact, I think these two kind of comments are actually very directly related to one another, but in different perspectives. Now, at the end of the day, like if I was going to give myself some kind of goals for my life, I would love to be somebody who is able to change the narrative around F the haters or ignore the haters, and in turn it around into love the haters or show mercy to the haters. Because I believe, when it comes to that kind of mindset, that there's people who are really hurting out there in the world, and then they take that out in the form of a comment section or in the form of a tweet or something like that. Now, that's a bigger conversation than what this video is going to dive into. But that's just something hopefully that you guys understand about me. In fact, actually, because of the nature of this video, and I want to be as real as possible, we'll remove said beanie and you guys can see me for all my my widow's peak and forehead glory, as you will. Now, to Javier, and they were asking like a very detailed question, and to them, if you want like a step-by-step guide on basically how I structure my day, my videos, and that balance, I would happily make that for you, Javi. I'll post it over on Prime University. It's kind of my education channel. It's a hobby channel right now. It's like something where like I really hope to kind of really imbue it with as much of the information that I know about programming, cartooning, and video making, and all that, even game design and development. And that's actually kind of the key point. Obviously Sash here kind of being a troll. And their follow-up comment, I think, is very telling in that regards. But in terms of what they're getting at here, talking about success, I think that's what we're going to hopefully at least try to communicate through these stories to you guys today, because success isn't something that I look towards in terms of a monetary or a numeric subscriber count. Now, while I would love to be at 100,000 subscribers, not gonna lie, I think that's just a function of time, and the goal is just for me, like I like to make videos. I actually love to make videos, and that in and of itself I find is successful. For me, success is being able to read to my kids at night, to be able to tuck them in, to be able to play with them when I get off work, to be able to go bike riding with them. And that's things that I get to do every day. One of the things that I don't know if it's ever painfully clear, but when it comes to video games and making these videos and occasionally streaming, and when I say occasionally, maybe it's up to 3 times a week. It really just depends on what's going on with the family, what we all have to do in any given period of time, because there is a balance. There is going to be give and take. I can't always play games, nor I think what I want to. I get a lot of joy of gaming with my kids, teaching them all kinds of things. And that for me is success. I feel like I've been a success for a long time. My family loves me and I love them, and I have great kids. And yes, sometimes being a parent is difficult, and don't look at me here in this little isolated box of a window and think this is a guy that's got it all figured out. Like I'm trying my best every day. I think that's the key point, and I'm learning from my mistakes, and hopefully I'm not ruining my kids. Like I don't think I am, but only time will tell. Like, I read, I play, I pray. That's my goal as a parent, and that is my priority. And therefore, in my mind, I'm a success. But everybody's going to have different views. Sash also apparently clearly has their own view, or they're just trying to be a troll. Either way, I hope that they're doing great. I want them to have the best. But that's a longer intro than I really intended. I want to talk to you guys today about 3 stories that really kind of define me, what I look at in terms of life. I'm going to talk to you guys. I'm going to tell a story about my grandfather. I'm going to tell you guys a story about my parents. I'm going to tell you a story about my kids. And that's essentially what it is. Now, there's kind of a theme that I think in each of these stories that hopefully inspire and hopefully kind of give you more insight into who I am beyond the camera and beyond YouTube. And so let's start with my grandfather. He was a mountain of a man. He was 6'5". I was told I was supposed to be 6'3". I only got to 6 foot, but I was really, but he was just a mountain of a man. He served in the military. He was a Marine. He fought in World War II, and he hated his job. He was an engineer, and for the longest time, while he was working, he was an angry guy, and that's not who he was, right? Like, that was just the time and how he dealt with all the stuff that happened before, from being in World War II to working a job that you didn't like and you couldn't leave, to eventually to the point where when he retired, he was a completely different man. So when I talked to my uncles and when I talked to my dad was the youngest. And while this will be more part of his story in a second, my dad lost his mom when he was like 10 or 12 years old. And so my grandfather became a widower at a very early, age. He had 3 sons. And my 2 uncles really knew my grandfather when he was in that angrier state in life. My dad knew him, obviously, when he wasn't so burdened by pressures. He was able to retire. And my mom knew him in that same regards. And so, like, there's 2 tales of him and his life, from when he was like this, a younger man to when he was a retired, grandpa in this regards. I knew him all the way up till I was 8 years old. We lost him. He passed away from a heart aneurysm when I was 8. And it's actually the same heart aneurysm that my dad has. And they're monitoring his heart regularly. So hopefully we can keep my dad around for a long time. That all being said, as a boy, as a grandson to my, in this regards, my perception of this mountain, is he had the most beautiful monarch butterflies as a kid in the backyard playing. And he had the best cinnamon raisin bread. I'm sure it was off the shelf, whatever, but like, this guy was a legend. He took us fishing, and he was always so just generous and kind. And so it's always interesting to see as people evolve and grow, me being at the tail end of that, and obviously having and hearing different stories about my grandfather. One of the things, and one of the greatest stories that has actually, I think, influenced me the most in everything I choose to do, and the reason why I choose to do it, is that my grandfather helped people out anonymously. I learned later that if he ever heard of anybody in trouble, struggling to pay the rent or buy food would show up at their house. Money would show up in an envelope, unmarked. It's through learning about that has shaped my view of charity. I don't talk about being charitable. I don't want to start about talking about being charitable, but I think charity is a very important aspect. I think, and that's how I structure my time. So into Javier's, question, and into Sash's, kind of diss, I like how I run my channel, what I do with the resources that you guys give me. Hey, it's none of your business. I'm never going to sit here and say like, okay, look at me give this, look at me giving that. I don't feel like that's my responsibility, but I find a great joy in being able to help others. And I'm going to continue to do that. And y'all's support, whether you're just watching and subscribing and things like that empowers me. And then also when we talk about, harmony with my wife, it helps us to look at it and say, hey, what's the best use of my time right now? Family, kids, God, like all that's there. And then when that's taken care of, sometimes my wife and I will play games together, so we don't do a lot of streaming, but we do occasionally, and it's a lot of fun to do that. But it's not something that I'm striving to be in everything. I want to be, in a way, forgotten, if that makes sense. I want to exemplify what my grandfather did and love without the sense of what comes back to me. And I just wanted to tell the story of him and not try to make it too much about me, even though indirectly there is obviously a story there, because now you've been told that I'm charitable, and we'll move on. I just, from his perspective, like, I really appreciated that about him. And that's something I want to personify. That's something I want to take on, what he did there. All right. Now I want to talk to you guys today about my parents. Like I said, my dad lost his mom when he was very young. and it impacted him, to this day. And, so Josephine was her name. And she died, from lung cancer, from smoking. And, that's where, for me, I'm very glad that smoking and cigarettes have never been a part of my life. I'm really glad that that's not a part of popular culture, because it definitely did take my grandmother, who I've never met, away from us. On the opposite side of things, my mom's dad was a scoundrel, I guess is probably the most polite way I could put this into words. Definitely, who knows, I could be related to you. The guy was definitely all over the place. He also served in the military, and he grew up in an orphanage. So one of the things for me with my mom's dad, Larry is his name. He passed away. So, at this point, all my grandparents have passed away. I only got to meet one. I got to meet my mom's mom, my grandmother, Rosemary, but she already kind of lost her mind. I spent a lot of time kind of serving and helping drive her around. And, by this point she had, obviously massive dementia. And, but the thing was just try to love her as best you can. She would tell you some crazy stories. And it's at the end of the day, I learned a lot about how, horrible people are, especially to the elderly. Through kind of serving my grandmother, but I never got to know her, because especially in that state, they're just there, right? They're there, and who knows where they're going to go. So I never really got to know my grandmother. I knew my grandfather far better, in that regards, just from my limited exposure to him. So my dad obviously impacted a lot of that. When I was a teenager, when I was 15 or 16, my dad had been running this business, and he was doing these really interesting things that when I learned about it, it's really impactful. He was going into nursing homes and bringing in nutritionists, like a chef, bringing in dentists and things like that, and dramatically cutting down the amount of medications and hospitalizations that actually occurred in nursing homes. And so this was something very revolutionary, and he caught the attention of big pharma. And so I have a very big bias against big pharma innately. I have to challenge it sometimes, because when I hear a story that's obviously negative about what pharma's doing, I'm like, oh yeah, those jerks. But then I'm like, well, let's just, I always try to dig in and check. But eventually we lost everything. He got bought out, and then they screwed him over, and we lost everything. So I found myself as a young man going from a very, I think, wealthy upbringing, definitely upper middle class. I wouldn't necessarily call us we weren't millionaires, at least to my knowledge. But we lost everything. We had, it was my mom at the last minute found us a trailer that we could go live in, as opposed to living under a bridge or having to go live with aunts or uncles or something like that. I think that would have probably been the case for the kids, but everybody was struggling, especially around that time. But we lost everything. And in my life, I'm very grateful kind of for that loss, because I think one of the things that shapes me as a human being is not defining my success by material things. I drive a 20-year-old truck right now. The check engine light's on all the daggum time. I keep taking it in, and it just doesn't go away. But it runs. We're working through it. I have to go get it off so I can actually pay the taxes, because they won't let me. It won't pass inspection. Anyway, it's a whole thing. We'll get there. I'll figure it out. But I'm not successful because I own any particular vehicle. I'm not successful because I own any particular thing. Our losing everything, I know, is really hard on my dad. For him, success was the things that he could provide for his family, and that was taken away from him. And he had to then reevaluate his definition of success through that loss. My dad suffered a lot of loss. My mom suffered a lot of loss in her life. And I think it's really critical to not define ourselves by our wins and our losses. And kind of bringing this back to me and how this influences my YouTube decision making is one of the things, in terms of what Sash believes, or even what you might believe, I don't see if I'm ever able to be a full-time YouTuber, if that is ever, in my future, it's not my future, because I would take that time that would afford me, and I would make video games. That's what I went to school to study for. I'm an artist. I illustrator. I can do voice noises and sound effects, and I'm also, guess what, a programmer. In fact, I've actually made a handful of games, and they never were ready for release, but I've never had that time to finish. And so one of the things that I would do if I ever given that opportunity is I would make games. I don't know if you'd get more videos, maybe a handful, do a couple different things like that. But like, it's not what I would do. I wouldn't just do YouTube. Like, because I love doing YouTube. I don't want YouTube to be stressful. I don't want to ever sit here and have to worry that like, oh, that video didn't do well. How are we going, like, even if it's, I don't know. I love making videos, and I never want a video to define how I feel and how I react. Right. So that's hopefully there. Hopefully that's that story, and that kind of makes sense in that regards. And finally, to my kids. Julie and I couldn't have kids. When we were first married, it turns out like she had a pituitary tumor in her brain. And miraculously we had Maddie, and Maddie's going to be 8 years old this year. And, truly just blown away. And obviously after Maddie, we weren't able to have kids. Eventually, through obviously like Julie's non-responsive to the medication, which, ended up getting quite expensive. I remember having to pay $600 a month to afford the medication that was, for her tumor. And she kind of stopped responding to it. So we ended up having to make a decision, eventually ended up to get taken out. And now we have 5 kids, and it's truly this miraculous thing. And for me, when I look at like Maddie and when I look at the kids, and then I compare that to what I hear online, right? It gives me a really interesting perspective with the kids, their excitement and their hope and the things that they get to experience. It's really helpful for me to see that excitement and hope in them, because they haven't yet been jaded by the world. They haven't yet been, and they will be hurt by the world. There's things that I can't protect them from, nor should I, in a way, because there's a part of life that you got to take your hits. You can't, safety, and in my mind, is an illusion. It's all about preparation and understanding that there are good times and there are bad times. And if you're prepared for the bad times aren't as bad. But if you try to like put people in a bubble, then, you're only just, I'm only hurting them in the long run, not preparing them for the way the world works. But with them, and being able to see how they interact with things, how they interact with others, how they learn and how they get excited. It reminds me that, sometimes I have to sit here and look at the things that I've been given with a sense of gratitude and excitement and wonder, and not to sit here and get bogged down in all of this, if that makes any kind of sense. Anyway, the being a parent, I think, and it's not, I don't want to guilt anybody like, oh, you got to have kids. That's not what I'm saying here. But being a parent here, I think, has helped shape my mindset towards everybody, helped shape how I view people, how I try to interact. And note that you can go find times in the comments where I say F you to people. I think rightfully so. I think sometimes, like, when I read comments, I kind of get a feeling, right or wrong, that sometimes somebody just needs to be kind of like, tough love, to be like, hey, what's up? Versus somebody who needs a little bit softer of a hand or softer of an approach. I don't try to, present myself as like, like, I guess, America's dad or anything like that, if that's a term still today. But the idea is that, we're all human. We all are going to fall short. We're all going to fail. And it's about like the going forward. It's about moving forward. It's about, communicating. It's about, trying and not being afraid of failure in that regards. And so when it comes down to these comments from, Javier, who's generally curious how I balance all of this, well, I can dive into kind of a detailed step-by-step. And if that's what you want, Javier, happy to put that together for you. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily exciting. It literally is a calendar. It's like, if you have a calendar app, and then it's about communication, etc. And it's also not about streaming first and foremost. I don't think I even started streaming until years into kind of making content for Work to Game. And then it's like, okay, we'll occasionally, stream in that regards. And it kind of ends up being more of a community focused event in my mind, or it becomes more event based. Like, hey, now here's the live letter. We're going to hang out for that. We're going to do this thing live, but it's not like, oh, I'm always live. Like, because there's no way as a dad, as a employee, as a human being, that I can even try to balance any and all of that in any stretch of the imagination. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed these stories. Hopefully they make sense. Essentially, kind of at least how when I've been thinking about these comments over the weekend. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, welcome. And you're new, welcome. But yeah, I hopefully you guys have a great week. I'm looking forward to making some more videos for you guys this week. And I'll see you soon. Take care.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with the clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Oh yeah.